Hey guys, what's up? Today's video is important because we're going to talk about the different aspects of COVID-19 and we're going to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about COVID-19 with the intention to help people understand whether they should get a vaccine or not, which vaccines are the best, and remove vaccine hesitation as much as we can. So let's dive in. Hey guys, so this is the map that we're going to talk about. Let's start at COVID-19 right here. But before we start at COVID-19, I want your attention to go here. The new virus that caused COVID-19, novel coronavirus, came out in China, and the first variant as it spread throughout the country and mutating was D614G. This is what left the borders of China, and this D614G mutation is present in all global variants. The reason it happened was because this mutation led to the virus having a higher transmission. Viruses don't necessarily prefer becoming more deadly, even though that might still happen just by chance, because a deadlier virus would probably just kill off its host before it can replicate as much as it wants to. So it just wants to be higher transmission. And this is exactly what has happened in India, where we have the double mutant and the triple mutant. The double mutant basically means that there are two significant mutations on top of all of the other mutations that are already happening. The triple mutant has three significant mutations. One is the D614G, which is already present in all of them, along with two more of these and one more V382L. E484Q, L425R and V382L are spike protein mutations which are significant in terms of helping the virus increase transmission. Most of the mutations that happen in the virus just don't really matter. So significant mutations, that's all this means. Okay. So what are the side effects of getting a vaccine? While some people might not experience side effects at all, others might get soreness in their arms because of swollen lymph nodes, or body aches, nausea and fatigue for a couple of days. After you get the vaccine, you are monitored and you're asked to wait for 15 to 30 minutes where you're monitored to see if you get an allergic reaction or not. Most allergic reactions though happen within a single day or 4 to 6 weeks after you get vaccinated. And we have safety data for vaccinations beyond the point of 4 to 6 weeks for most vaccines. So we know that it's safe. These things are also constantly monitored, and the aches, fever, chills you get are basically your own immune system mounting an immune response against the vaccine that has now introduced a part of the virus inside you to gain that antibody immunity. These side effects are not happening because of the vaccine, they're happening because of your own immune system trying to catch up to the virus and create immunity. Now, since it's constantly monitored, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been paused for analysis at this point of time because there were blood clots found in 6 out of the 6.8 million doses that were given. But since it's still a safety concern, they paused it. That's how much they're constantly monitoring the situation. Sometimes when old people pass away a month or two after getting the vaccine, it's just because they're old. It just represents the cycle of life. And you should note that at the age of 85, the chance of dying in the next month is 1 in 10 of natural causes. So whether you get the vaccine or not, so just getting the vaccine happened to be a matter of timing, not necessarily a cause of that person dying. They just happened to get the vaccine a couple of months before they died, sad as it might be. Also, there were a couple of cases in the media where a Florida doctor died and a single woman in Utah died after their second dose of the vaccine. But after autopsies and proper scrutiny, it was shown that vaccines did not cause the death. They were not linked to the deaths at all. It is important to tell people who might want to not vaccinate their children that after COVID, in some children we see multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which is basically that the child incidentally gets the virus because someone in the family or somewhere else was sick. They test PCR positive, but they're asymptomatic. And so children don't really react much to the virus, is what you've been told, right? But a month later, some of them develop a really high fever and they come into the hospital with inflammation in their heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, skin, eyes, and all these different organs. And they test PCR negative, but they test antibody positive. And it's just really horrible to see. And what is happening over here is that the immune system has been triggered to mount an inflammatory response against itself and against the cells that line the blood vessels. And since all organs have blood vessels, this inflammatory response happens all across their body, and it can lead to some very serious long-term effects as well. There are other long-term and short-term neuropsychiatric symptoms of COVID as well, so it affects your brain for sure. You lose smell, new onset anxiety, depression, psychosis, and suicidal behavior being onset are some of the things that have been seen. The brain damage that occurs here is unrelated to you having low oxygen. So if you think that respiratory insufficiency caused it, no. All of this happened before, during, and after you got COVID. Why do some people show symptoms while others don't? Well, there might be a few possible reasons for being symptomatic or asymptomatic. ACE2 receptors, which are the receptors that the coronavirus uses to bind to the cells, might have a different distribution and a different level of activity in different people. Even in your nose and in different places, like your nose and your other mucus glands. TMPRSS2 is another receptor in your nasopharynx, which can have a different distribution and a different activity. Some people might also make more mucus. So having more mucus around your cells would just make the contact of the virus with the cell wall more difficult. There are two hands of the immune system, the innate immunity and the adaptive immunity. And the strength of innate immunity also matters, because we've seen that people with life-threatening symptoms of COVID have a problem with their interferons. Interferons are a part of the innate immunity which basically interfere with the activity of the virus. And they also alert T cells, and T cells are what coordinate your adaptive immune response, which is the other hand of the immune system. A stronger innate immunity also has a calmer response as compared to one that's weaker, which means that your immune system won't freak out when you get infected. Someone with high disease resistance could have an immune response that is so strong that it itself leads to symptoms and complications and just starts hurting itself. And based on who you are, these things will change, and someone might be symptomatic and someone might be asymptomatic. But as we've seen with children, being asymptomatic does not necessarily mean that there are no long-term effects to the whole thing. Now, should you mix and match vaccines? No, you should not. Don't mix and match vaccines. Stick to the same brand for both the doses, and experts disagree a little bit, but studies are still going on, and the recommendation is to stick to the same brand of vaccine for both doses. And please always get both doses of the vaccine. And so we get to a question, will transmission stop with herd immunity? Well, yes, but reaching herd immunity is almost impossible at this point, because the race is against new mutants and cutting off transmission to avoid mutations. And this is completely dependent on human behavior at this point, but also on vaccinations and how well they stop transmission. And we don't necessarily know how well they're going to stop transmission. This is something we're going to find out as more and more people get vaccinated. Vaccine rollout is also uneven, which means that small populations might get outbursts while small populations might not, and so that might be an issue. New variants might be more resistant to vaccines, which is what we are seeing already. Immunity might not also last forever, which means you would need booster shots, and a lot of people might not want the booster shots, or a lot of people might not even want their second dose after they get their first one, because vaccines might make people increase social contact and not wear masks and not wash hands. And this is something that we have started seeing even in the US itself, with the CDC saying that people who are fully vaccinated do not necessarily need to wear masks when they're traveling outside. Okay, so here's another question. Should you get a vaccine if you've been tested COVID positive? Well, no, if you still have COVID or you're positive or suspected, you wait 2 weeks so that you don't infect people at the vaccination site. But if you recovered and it's been 4 to 8 weeks, then yes, go and get your vaccine. The other case for if you should get a vaccine after you've been COVID positive is if you have gotten plasma therapy or monoclonal antibody treatment. In that case, you wait at least 90 days. And there's a reason for that. The vaccine antibodies the antibodies that you get from the vaccine may conflict with the treatment antibodies, the antibodies that are present in you because of the plasma therapy or the monoclonal antibody treatment. And as soon as you put the spike protein inside your body, the treatment antibodies will neutralize the spike protein. So your body is not going to gain immunity at all. You're safe for 90 days, but like after that, you're not safe and you don't develop any immunity. So wait 90 days and then get your vaccine. Now, a fair question to ask is, can you check the effectiveness of your vaccines by testing for antibodies? Well, yes and no. While it does seem logical that your blood would show antibodies against COVID-19 after vaccine, antibody tests can't check up on vaccine effectiveness. Mostly because the tests don't even necessarily look for or have the capacity to detect spike proteins. They might not even be specific to COVID-2. They might just end up detecting antibodies to other coronaviruses that cause the common flu. The kinds of tests that you would need to have 95 to 99% accuracy, and they would be prohibitively expensive for most people. And the ones that are more affordable absolutely do not have the kind of sensitivity that is required to make sure that the detected antibodies are the ones that you're looking for. Anyway, now let's talk about vaccines and efficacy. There are different developmental methods and there are many steps required to get vaccines into the market. The COVID-19 vaccines have broken records and have been the fastest created vaccines in the history of vaccines. And the experience that we have with the development and usage of vaccines should put your mind at ease about their safety. So the 4 standard methods are live attenuated vaccines, which are found in measles vaccines. We have lots of experience with an inert toxin vaccine, which is shown in the tetanus vaccines. Inactivated vaccines, where a dead pathogen which has been chemically killed is put inside your body and elicits an immune response. And this is used in the polio vaccine and the hepatitis A and the rabies vaccine. Scientists have decades of experience with creating vaccines using a dead virus, which is what is being used in the Chinese vaccine. And even the technologies being used in these new methods have been in development for a very long time, because people already knew that if pandemic X happens, we should be able to cut through red tape and have a technology that's ready that can just put in the virus that's of interest at the point of the pandemic into our technology, create a vaccine and push it out as fast as we can. And that is exactly what has happened with the mRNA technology and the viral vector technology. We also have a lot of proven experience making vaccines using the adenovirus vectors. The AstraZeneca vaccine is a type of non-replicating viral vector vaccine which uses an adenovirus as a vector or a transporting element. A piece of coronavirus DNA is placed inside the adenovirus delivery device, and adenoviruses cause the common cold, but the vector is genetically changed in the vaccine so it can't replicate, and so you don't have to worry about that. Once the adenovirus vector is injected into the body, it goes into a cell and makes the cell produce its own random spike proteins. And the immune system detects these spike proteins which shouldn't be there and starts making antibodies against the spike proteins. Since the coronavirus uses these spike proteins to enter your cells, if you ever actually get infected by SARS-CoV-2, the immune system remembers the coronavirus spike proteins and proceeds to kill the virus. These vaccines are more stable than mRNA vaccines, but over time the body builds resistance to the adenoviral vector itself, which means future doses using this carrier will become less and less effective and the carrier will have to be updated. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine has a replication defective adenovirus type 26, which was used extensively to slow the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, with over 200,000 doses administered over there. And now more than 6 million doses have been administered in the US, and once a tiny problem has shown up, it has been paused for further review. The AstraZeneca vaccine uses the simian adenovirus vector, which is the chimpanzee adenovirus vector, and more than 20 million doses have been given all across the UK and Europe, and in India it is manufactured under the name of Covishield, and more than 127 million doses have been given. So this is safe. Also, inactivated vaccines, which is used in the Indian vaccine Covaxin made by Bharat Biotech, is being used in the country, and more than 17 million doses have been given, and continuous studies are being done to check safety and effectiveness of this vaccine all the time. Inactivated vaccines have a dead pathogen inside them, so they cannot revert back into some other form, and they can't replicate, and they can't give you COVID. On the other hand, just like adenovirus vaccines, the new mRNA vaccines also only contain instructions. The entire genetic sequence of the coronavirus is studied, and the part for mRNA, which only makes the spike protein, is synthesized to make the vaccine. Once it's injected into your body, it enters the cell which reads the mRNA and begins to make harmless spike proteins of its own. From there, the body's immune system recognizes the foreign threat and creates immunity against it. This is how the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines work, but the disadvantage is that mRNA breaks down easily and needs to be kept ultra cold and needs a fatty protection layer, which isn't ideal for a vaccine that needs to reach all parts of the world. mRNA, even though it's gene therapy of a sort, cannot alter your DNA, and you cannot get COVID-19 from an mRNA vaccine or a viral vector vaccine. You can see all of these have different efficacies over here. Now you might want to take the 95% efficacy Pfizer vaccine, but these efficacies and these vaccines cannot be compared based on these numbers, because the trials for all these different vaccines took place at different times, they took place in different locations, and they used absolutely different markers for the cutoffs and thresholds. So as long as the same characteristics are not used all across studies, you can't compare them based on just this. And that's a good thing, because efficacy is not really that important. The real motive of COVID-19 vaccines is not to stop transmission, or even though it might happen a little bit, or to stop you from getting COVID-19. It is to prevent serious symptoms, hospitalization, and death. These are the only criteria that the vaccine attempts to stop from happening, and all vaccines meet this purpose. So you don't have to wait for a better vaccine to come. Get what you're getting as soon as you're getting it. Now we also have vaccines coming out for 12-year-olds, and by next year we should also have vaccines coming out for up to 6-year-olds. Now that we have this out of the way, we can go into COVID-19. COVID-19 is a disease that is caused by a type of coronavirus called SARS-CoV-2. Coronaviruses are viruses that cause respiratory syndromes. There is no cure for COVID-19, there is only a vaccine. As all viruses mutate, so does the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The good thing is that it mutates slower than influenza at the rate of 1 to 2 nucleotide changes per month. These mutations are basically just the mistakes that the virus makes as it's copying itself. These mutations are usually useless, or they're detrimental to the survival, but sometimes they prove advantageous, and that is exactly what had happened here, where 2 significant mutations occurred with all of the other useless mutations, right? Double mutant, triple mutant in India. Okay, so some of these advantageous mutations have brought about variants of concern, which you might have heard of, like the UK variant, South Africa variant, both of which have 1.5 times more transmission. Not necessarily deadlier, just transmission. Remember, the virus wants to be more transmissive, not necessarily deadly. The Brazil variant and the USA variant. USA has lots of different variants, and as of today, an Indian variant is also present in the US. The US variants have 1.5 times the transmission as the initial D61G first variant over here. Okay, all of the vaccines are also targeted to this first variant, which traveled across the globe, and that is why all these variants have a reduced neutralization inside your body even after you get the vaccine and even after you get plasma therapy. All variants except the UK variant, which still kind of is tackled completely by the vaccines that are present. That being said, the vaccines are still effective against these variants to quite an extent. They're just slightly less effective, but more studies are being done on that. Now, the presence of these variants, and it's important to know these are variants, not strains, calls for the need for sequencing of all of these variants, because it's going to help us figure out the actual origin of the virus and the variant and understand why the cases are actually spreading. The number of cases increasing might just be increasing because you're increasing testing, or because these actually have higher transmissibility, or because of something called the founder effect, which is where one person has the virus, the other person also has the virus, and this is located in only this region, but then this person travels here and this person travels here, and now this large region or these new two populations that hadn't seen these initial variants start spreading this variant that was present here. So that's what's happening. It doesn't mean that the transmissibility was higher, it just meant that these variants traveled from one place to the other. Okay, now this seems concerning, right? And you might ask why these variants are popping up all the time. And that's because the virus only mutates when it's inside the body, inside a host cell. It does not mutate outside a host cell. That means to stop or slow down or even prevent mutations from happening, you need to cut off transmission completely. And the only way to do that is to wear masks, social distance, and stay indoors, which is what we've been told for the past 1.5 years, but people don't necessarily seem to want to do that. And I understand you can't always stay indoors, right? You need food, you need supplies, you sometimes just need to go for a walk. But you can reduce the risk. You can go to non-crowded places, and if you go to non-crowded places, you can come out of there really quickly, wear your mask when you're inside it, and sanitize everything and wash and take a bath and all of that. I think at this point it's also fair to mention the people who say that they've always stayed indoors and still gotten COVID. Well, for those people, it's not necessary that their contact with the outside world was completely cut off. Even if they were ordering in, the delivery people visit many areas, and you could have gotten transmission from that channel. And the only way to do something about that is maybe just maintain better hygiene and wear a mask when you're getting it. And then whatever you get, put that in some other container and throw this, or sanitize as much as you can. In conclusion, please get vaccinated with both the doses. Vaccines are effective even against new variants. And even after you get the vaccine, please maintain social distance, wear masks, and wash your hands. The same stuff we've been told, and cut off lines of transmission so that our habits and behaviors can become key to stopping transmission and the popping up of mutants all over the place. If you like the video, please smash like, click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this video with whoever can use this information. We're all in this together. Thanks for watching.